this is Dave with Taboo Customs. Today we're going to be discussing and taking a look at the installation of our AW4 transmission oil pan skid plate. Okay, so with the kit you're going to get obviously the AW4 skid plate here, which is a all 7-gauge steel skid plate. It'll come powder coated flat black. You're also going to get new hardware for installing that skid plate, and this is longer hardware so that we make sure that we get enough thread contact up inside the transfer case. In addition to that, you'll get some instructions that will basically just be a mirror of what you're going to see here on the video. Okay, so to run through the geometry of the skid plate here real quick, what we've got is we've got an AW4 pan here, we've got our drain plug down here, and the dipstick tube here up front. Now the installation of this skid plate is very tight to this pan. We use the mounting holes on the pan, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get down there. And the main thing we wanted to do was keep this skid plate as close to the pan as possible. That way we keep from causing this skid plate to be more of an obstacle in your Jeep rather than a protection for the vital transmission parts inside the pan. Now, with the installation of this, what you're going to see is that we don't bolt to every hole in the oil pan. We only bolt to 10 holes here on the side. So that should allow you to leave the rest of the holes bolted up and then just unbolt the ones that you need so that you don't have to unseal the actual oil pan on your transmission. You'll also notice that we leave a large hole here so that you can still drain your transmission without it being an issue. Okay, so to install the skid plate, what we're going to need to do is remove the 5 bolts on each side. Now these will be the all the bolts on the side with the exception of the 2 rear bolts here at the corners. You'll leave those. You'll leave the 4 bolts across the front and the other bolts across the back. That should keep this pan sealed up to the transfer case enough so that it doesn't leak and it doesn't drip or anything like that on you. If you need to, you can take the skid plate itself and put it up there and see which ones that you need to pull out. These are metric bolts, so you'll need a 10mm socket. Now we will not be reusing these bolts, so you can just set them aside. Is you can see how this side here has a lot of gunk on it. We're going to want to clean that off so we have a flat place for our transmission skid plate to be resting when we bolt it up. So we'll do that. We'll get covered in crap. You can use a small flat screwdriver or a scraper. And as you can see, when I remove these, by removing just these 10 here, you shouldn't have an issue unless your pan is not sealed really well, and if it's not, you probably want to reseal it anyway. You shouldn't have an issue with the pan coming unsealed, so you should be able to do this without having to remove the fluid or replacing the fluid. So now that we got that clean, we will pull off the other side and we can work on getting it installed. Okay, so for installation, we'll be using, of course, our new longer bolts. You can discard our old bolts, and the bolts are basically, adding at least the thickness of the material that we're putting on here. And you have a couple options. You can apply blue Loctite to these if you would like. Typically, when you're reinstalling these, just the oil pan, you don't Loctite them, but we will go ahead and we'll apply some blue Loctite, and then we'll put these in. Now the one thing that you're really going to have to be careful of is the torque on these. Since this transmission is aluminum, you do not want to torque these down a lot because you will strip them out. I believe the spec in the book is about 60 inch-pounds, and so we're going to put all these in, and we're going to go ahead and torque them down to 60 inch-pounds. Now the easiest way to do that is to get 2 of them, and we'll use the 2 bolt holes in the middle to start with, as we got our skid plate all dirty. put it up there and line up the bolt holes. Okay, so with these bolts here into the transmission here, you'll just tighten those up. We actually already did that off camera. Tighten it up to bring this back in. You may get a little bit of leakage coming out here, but don't be too concerned about that. Typically these are rubber gaskets, so you're going to end up sealing those back up as you put this back on. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put our other bolts in. We'll start out by putting them all in by hand. Make sure you put all the bolts in before you really go and tighten things down. And again, make sure you get them threaded in well, because you don't want to cross thread them into the aluminum, because that would not be good. So we are actually going to use our little impact to get the bolts snugged up. Now you have to be careful with that, because like I said, you don't want to run it down with these, because you will over tighten the bolts. So we're just using this to get them up there. And now we'll use a small inch-pound torque wrench to check our torque on the bolts. Like I said, we're shooting for 60 inch-pounds. And always go back and double check, because as you tighten things up, could cause others to get loose. Once you've done that on both sides, you're pretty much done with your install. So that does it for the install of our AW4 oil pan skid plate. If you want to purchase one of these skid plates, you can visit us at taboocustoms.com. And if you have any questions or comments, you can send us an email there on our website, or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks. Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. Today we're going to be taking a look and doing the install on our AW4 transmission.